Right. So today we're diving deep, really deep into Kaynes Technology, India Limited.
Kaynes Technologies.
You've probably heard of them.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe.
But either way, stick with us because this is a fascinating company. And we've got their annual reports from 23 and 24.
Okay.
We've got a transcript from their October 24 earnings call. We want to understand what they do, where they're going, what their future holds.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to unpack here. And luckily, we have an expert to help us do it.
Well, thanks. I'm excited to dig into this.
Yeah. I was going through this material, and I was pretty blown away by some of the things that Kaynes is involved in.
Really?
For example, they just got this huge order from CDAC for high-performance computing servers.
Wow.
They're not messing around.
Yeah.
They're also, making serious moves in the smart meter market. They've already got a major contract in hand.
That's impressive.
So, there's a lot to talk about. So why don't we just jump right in?
Sounds good.
Now, the ESDM, that's the Electronic System Design and Manufacturing sector in India, is really starting to heat up.
It's a really exciting time for the industry. There's a lot of growth and a lot of potential.
And, Kaynes seems to be right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
So maybe, to kind of set the stage, could you give us a little bit of an overview of what Kaynes actually does? What are their main businesses?
Sure. So, one of the things that struck me looking at their annual reports is just how many different industries they're involved in.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. We're talking automotive, industrial, aerospace, defense. They're even working on projects related to outer space, nuclear power, medical devices. It's a really diverse portfolio.
Yeah, it's they're involved in everything.
Yeah.
So, how do they manage to be, successful in so many different areas? What's their secret sauce?
Well, at their core, they're a turnkey PCB assembly manufacturer.
PCB?
Printed circuit boards. So they handle the entire process of putting those boards together, from start to finish.
Okay.
And they specialize in what's called high-mix, high-technology production.
What does that mean?
So that means they can produce a wide range of really complex electronic products using, really advanced technology.
So they're not just slapping together basic boards.
No. This is high-tech stuff.
Oh, wow.
And they can adapt their production volume to meet their clients' needs, so they're really flexible.
So they're kind of like chameleons. They can adapt to whatever the market needs.
Exactly.
Okay. That's pretty impressive.
It is.
So that sounds like they're not just making circuit boards, they're creating these high-tech solutions for all these different industries.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And I was reading about some of their projects, and it's really cutting edge.
Yeah, they're doing some really interesting things.
There's this streetlight controller they made for one of their clients that's got a built-in energy meter, and it's part of this long-range network. That's pretty advanced stuff, right?
That's really innovative.
So they're not just assembling parts, they're designing and building these complete systems.
Right. And that ability to provide a complete solution that's really valuable, especially in a market like India, where the ESDM sector is growing so rapidly.
So, with all these different businesses and projects, what is Kaynes' overall vision for the future? Where do they see themselves going?
Well, it's clear from their annual report and the CEO's address that they're really focused on growth.
Okay, so how are they planning on achieving that growth? Are they just going to stick with what they're doing, or are they going to try to branch out into new areas?
It looks like they're planning on doing a bit of both.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
Well, they're looking to expand their core services, so things like, the PCB assembly that we were talking about, but they're also looking to diversify into new areas like semiconductor manufacturing and even manufacturing their own PCBs.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is, but it's also really smart. India is really pushing to become more self-reliant when it comes to electronics manufacturing, and Kaynes is positioning themselves to be a leader in that movement.
So they're kind of riding this wave of, make in India.
Exactly. They're seeing the opportunity and they're going for it.
So it sounds like they're really bullish on the future of the Indian ESDM sector.
They definitely are. And they're not just betting on the overall growth of the market.
No.
They're also making strategic moves to position themselves in high-value segments that are expected to see even stronger growth in the coming years.
Like what kind of segments?
Things like aerospace, defense, medical electronics. Those are all areas where the margins are typically higher and the demand is more consistent.
So they're going for quality over quantity.
Yeah, you could say that. They're focusing on areas where they can really add value and differentiate themselves.
Makes sense. But aren't those segments pretty competitive? Aren't there already established players in those spaces?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely competition, but Kaynes seems to be confident that they can carve out a niche for themselves.
Okay, so what makes them think that they can compete with these, like, big established companies?
Well, a few things. First, they've got a really strong track record of delivering high-quality products and services.
So they're not just newcomers, they've got a reputation to uphold.
Right. And second, they're really committed to innovation.
In what way?
Well, they're constantly investing in research and development. They're always looking for new ways to improve their processes and their products. They're really trying to stay ahead of the curve.
So they're not just following the trends, they're trying to set them.
Exactly. And that's really important in industries like aerospace and defense, where technology is constantly evolving.
So they're playing the long game.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. They're not just looking for quick wins. They're building a foundation for long-term success.
That's smart. And I mean, it's not just about the technology, right? It's also about understanding the specific needs of these high-value segments.
Absolutely. Kaynes has a deep understanding of the regulatory requirements, the quality standards, the supply chain dynamics in these industries. They know what it takes to succeed in these spaces.
So they're not just winging it. They've got a plan.
They definitely do. And it's a plan that seems to be working. You know, we were talking earlier about those high-performance computing servers. That order they got from CDAC, that's a huge vote of confidence.
That's a big deal. It sounds like they're serious about making a name for themselves in that market.
Yeah, it's a really competitive market, but Kaynes is clearly making some strategic moves to establish themselves as a major player.
Okay, so it sounds like Kaynes has a lot going for it. They've got a diverse portfolio. They're in high-growth industries. They're committed to innovation. But, I mean, no company's perfect, right? There's got to be some challenges that they're facing.
Oh, of course.
So what are some of the headwinds that they're up against? Like, what are the things that could potentially slow them down or derail their plans?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest challenges for any company operating in the ESDM sector is just the sheer complexity of the global supply chain.
Oh, yeah. That's been a big issue for a lot of companies lately.
It has, and it's not getting any easier. You know, there are geopolitical risks, there are trade tensions, there are shortages of key components. It's a lot to navigate.
So how is Kaynes dealing with all that? Like, do they have any strategies in place to mitigate those risks?
Well, one thing they're doing is diversifying their sourcing. They're not relying on any one supplier or any one region for their components. They're spreading their risk.
Makes sense. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And they're also building strong relationships with their suppliers, you know, working closely with them to ensure a stable supply of materials.
That's smart. It's all about collaboration these days.
It is. And they're also investing in their own capabilities. So, you know, they're building up their own manufacturing capacity so they're less reliant on external suppliers.
So they're kind of becoming more vertically integrated.
Right. And that gives them more control over their supply chain, which is really important in today's environment.
Okay. So it sounds like they're taking some proactive steps to manage the supply chain risk. But, I mean, there's got to be other challenges too, right? Like, what about the competitive landscape?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the ESDM sector is incredibly competitive, both in India and globally. There are a lot of companies vying for the same customers and the same market share.
So how is Kaynes planning on differentiating themselves? Like, how are they going to stand out from the crowd?
Well, we talked about innovation already, and that's definitely a key differentiator.
So they're betting on being the best, the most innovative.
Right. But it's not just about the technology itself. It's also about how they apply that technology. They're really focused on developing customized solutions that meet the specific needs of their customers.
So they're not just selling products, they're selling solutions.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful differentiator. You know, a lot of the big players in the market are more focused on mass production, on selling standardized products. But Kaynes is willing to work closely with their customers to develop solutions that are tailored to their specific requirements.
So they're kind of like the bespoke tailors of the electronics world.
That's a great analogy. And that level of customization, that's something that a lot of customers are willing to pay a premium for.
Okay, so it sounds like they've got a good strategy in place. But I mean, even with a good strategy, execution is key, right? Like,
Yeah.
they have to be able to actually deliver on their promises.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where their focus on operational excellence comes in. You know, they've got really strong manufacturing capabilities. They've got rigorous quality control processes. They're constantly investing in their workforce.
So they're not just about big ideas. They're also about getting their hands dirty and making things happen.
Exactly. And that combination of strategic vision and operational excellence, that's what's really setting them apart.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Keynes's businesses and their vision for the future, and it sounds like they're really well positioned for growth.
They are.
But, I mean, there are always risks, right? Like, what are some of the things that could potentially derail their plans?
Well, one of the biggest risks is just the overall global economic outlook. If there's a major slowdown or recession, that could definitely impact demand for electronics.
Yeah, that's a big one. No company is immune to those macroeconomic forces.
Right. And then there's always the risk of disruption. The technology landscape is constantly changing.
So they have to be adaptable.
Absolutely. They can't afford to get complacent. They have to be constantly innovating, constantly looking for ways to stay ahead of the curve.
Otherwise, they'll get left behind.
Exactly.
Okay, so far we've gotten a pretty good sense of what Keynes does, where they're going, what their strengths are, what the challenges are. But I think what a lot of people are really interested in is their recent acquisition strategy.
Yeah.
They've been pretty active on that front. And there's one acquisition in particular that's got everyone talking.
Iskra-Echo.
Iskra-Echo.
Huh.
That's the one. So can we maybe dig into that a little bit? Like, what's the significance of that acquisition for Keynes? And, what does it tell us about their overall strategy?
Sure. So Iskra-Echo is a Slovenian company that specializes in smart meters. And the acquisition has really catapulted Keynes into a leading position in the Indian smart meter market.
So they're not just dabbling in smart meters, they're going all in.
They are. And it makes a lot of sense. The Indian government is really pushing for the adoption of smart meters as part of their broader efforts to modernize the power grid.
Okay, so there's a lot of government support for this technology.
There is. And that creates a huge opportunity for companies like Keynes.
So they're kind of riding this wave of government policy.
They are. But it's not just about the government mandates. Smart meters also offer a lot of benefits to consumers.
Like what?
Well, for one, they provide more accurate billing.
So no more estimated bills.
Right. And they also allow consumers to track their energy usage in real time, which can help them save money.
So it's good for the environment and good for the wallet.
Exactly. And that's why the demand for smart meters is expected to grow exponentially in the coming years.
So it's a smart move by Keynes to get in on the ground floor.
It is. And the Iskra-Echo acquisition gives them a real head start. Iskra-Echo is a global leader in smart meter technology. They've got a proven track record. They've got a strong brand. They've got a global reach.
So Keynes is not just acquiring a company. They're acquiring all of that expertise and experience.
Exactly. And that's incredibly valuable. It would have taken Keynes years to build up that kind of expertise on their own.
Yeah.
But with the acquisition, they've got it overnight.
That's a smart shortcut.
It is. And it's not just about the technology itself. Iskra-Echo also has strong relationships with utilities and government agencies around the world. And those relationships are going to be really valuable to Keynes as they expand their smart meter business.
So it's like they've acquired a key to the kingdom.
Yeah, you could say that. And they're not wasting any time in putting that key to use. In the October earnings call, they talked about how they've already secured an order book of 11 crore rupees from Iskra-Echo's existing customers.
That's a pretty good start.
It is. And they're projecting that smart meters are going to contribute about 10% of their business in the current year.
That's significant. It sounds like this acquisition is already paying off.
It is. And they're expecting that contribution to grow significantly in the coming years.
So it's a long-term play.
It is. They're betting big on the future of smart meters in India.
And it sounds like a pretty safe bet. I mean, all the trends are pointing in the right direction.
They are. The government support is there. The consumer demand is there. The technology is mature. It's a market that's ripe for growth.
So Iskra-Echo is a big win for Keynes.
It definitely is. It's a strategic acquisition that's going to pay dividends for years to come.
Okay, but, I mean, are there any risks associated with this acquisition? Like, is there anything that could potentially go wrong?
Of course, there are always risks.
So, what are some of the things that Keynes needs to be careful of?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is going to be integrating Iskra-Echo into their existing operations.
Yeah, merging two companies is never easy.
It's not. There are cultural differences to overcome. There are systems to integrate. There are processes to align. It's a complex undertaking.
So Keynes is going to have to be really careful to manage that integration process effectively.
They are, and they're going to have to do it quickly. They need to start realizing the benefits of this acquisition as soon as possible.
So they're under a lot of pressure to make this work.
They are, but they also have a lot of experience in integrating acquisitions.
Okay, so that's reassuring.
It is, and they've got a strong leadership team in place.
So they're in good hands.
I think so.
Okay, so Integration is one risk. Are there any others?
Yeah, I think another risk is just the competitive landscape. The smart meter market is pretty crowded.
So they're going to have to fight for market share.
They are. And there are some big players in that market, both domestic and international.
So what's Kaynes' strategy for competing with those big players?
Well, one thing they're doing is focusing on niche markets. So, for example, they're targeting the agricultural sector, where there's a growing demand for smart meters to help farmers manage their water and energy usage more efficiently.
Okay, so they're finding these little pockets of opportunity where they can really differentiate themselves.
Exactly. And they're also leveraging their existing relationships with utilities and government agencies to win contracts.
So they're using their connections to their advantage.
They are, and they're also offering competitive pricing.
So they're not just relying on quality, they're also being aggressive on price.
Right. They're trying to make it really hard for their competitors to beat them.
Okay, so it sounds like they've got a good plan in place. But, only time will tell how it all plays out.
That's true. But based on what we've seen so far, I think Kaynes is in a really strong position.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree.
They've got a clear vision. They've got a strong track record. They're making smart moves. I'm excited to see what they do next.
You do? This is definitely a company to keep an eye on.
And one thing that really stood out to me about this acquisition was that it's not just about Kaynes becoming a bigger player in the smart meter market.
It's more than just size.
Yeah, it's about them moving up the value chain.
Up the value chain.
Before, they were mainly like an EMS player in this segment.
EMS.
Electronic manufacturing services.
Oh, okay.
So basically, they were making parts for other companies' smart meters.
Got it.
But now with Iskra-Mekko, they can bid on entire smart meter projects, like offer end-to-end solutions.
Wow. So they're not just making the pieces anymore.
No, they're becoming a systems integrator.
That's a big shift.
It is, and it shows how ambitious they are.
And from what they said in the earnings call, they're expecting smart meters to be 10% of their business this year?
Yeah, around 10%, which is pretty impressive considering they just acquired Iskra-Mekko.
And that's just the beginning, right?
Right? The Indian government is really pushing for smart meter adoption all over the country.
So the market's only going to get bigger.
Exactly. And Kaynes is in a prime position to capitalize on that growth.
It's like they've timed this perfectly.
It does seem that way, but,
Yeah.
It's not just about being in the right place at the right time.
There's more to it.
Yeah, they also need to be able to execute their strategy effectively.
Especially in a market as competitive as smart meters.
Exactly, and that's where their acquisition strategy really shines.
How so?
Well, by acquiring Iskra-Mekko, they've instantly gained so much experience, expertise, and connections in the smart meter market.
So it's not just about the technology itself.
No, it's about the know-how, the relationships, the credibility that Iskra-Mekko brings to the table.
It's like they've bought a shortcut to success.
Yeah, kind of. They've bypassed a lot of the hurdles that a new entrant would normally face.
Smart move.
It is, but, it's not all smooth sailing.
There's always a catch.
Right, the smart meter market is really competitive.
They're going to have to fight for every contract.
There are some big players out there, both domestic and international.
So how do you see this playing out?
Well, I think Kaynes is going to have to leverage its strengths.
Which are?
Well, they're really agile. They can adapt quickly to changing market conditions.
That's important in a fast-moving industry.
It is, and they're also really innovative.
So they're not afraid to try new things.
No, they're constantly pushing the boundaries.
Okay, so agility and innovation, those are their weapons.
Exactly, and they're going to need to use them wisely to carve out their niche in this market.
It's going to be interesting to see how they do.
It will. I'm really curious to see how they differentiate themselves.
What will set them apart from the competition?
I think their focus on customized solutions could be a key differentiator.
We talked about that before, how they're kind of like the bespoke tailors of the electronics world.
Right, and I think that approach could really resonate with customers in the smart meter market.
Especially those who are looking for something more than just a standard off-the-shelf solution.
Exactly. Kaynes has the ability to really understand their customers' needs and to develop solutions that are tailored to those needs.
So they're not just selling a product, they're selling a partnership.
Right, and that's a powerful value proposition.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about smart meters, but let's not forget about Kaynes' other big move, their entry into high-performance computing servers.
Yeah, that CDAC order was a huge win.
But they're entering a market dominated by giants.
It's true. It's a David versus Goliath situation.
So what are their chances of success?
Well, I wouldn't count them out.
Why not?
They have a few things going for them. First, their reputation for quality and reliability is a major asset.
So they're not coming in as complete unknowns.
Right. They've already proven that they can deliver complex, high-tech products that meet the demanding standards of industries like aerospace and defense.
So they've got the credentials.
They do. And secondly, they're not trying to go it alone. They're forming partnerships with both global and Indian players in the high-performance computing space.
Smart move. There's strength in numbers.
Exactly. These collaborations will give them access to the technology, the expertise, and the market reach they need to compete effectively.
So they're building an ecosystem of support.
Precisely. They're leveraging the strengths of others to complement their own capabilities.
Okay, so partnerships are key. But what about the technology itself? Can they keep up with the rapid pace of innovation in high-performance computing?
That's definitely a challenge. High-performance computing is a constantly evolving field.
So they can't afford to stand still.
No, they need to invest heavily in research and development and stay ahead of the curve.
It's a race against time.
It is, and they need to be constantly innovating and pushing the boundaries to stay competitive.
Okay, so innovation is crucial. But what about the business side of things? Can they navigate the complex world of partnerships and contracts?
That's another challenge. Managing relationships with multiple partners, each with their own agendas and priorities, can be tricky.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It is. Kaynes will need to be skilled at building trust, fostering collaboration, and finding win-win solutions.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about the people, too.
Absolutely. High-performance computing is a team sport, and Kaynes needs to build a strong team to succeed.
So what's your overall assessment of their chances in this market?
I think they have the potential to be a major player.
You're optimistic.
I am. They have the ambition, the agility, and the strategic mindset to succeed. But it's not going to be easy.
It's going to be a tough fight.
It will, but I think they're up for the challenge.
We'll be watching closely to see how it all unfolds.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be following Kaynes Technology. It's really interesting to see how Kaynes is approaching these new markets. Like, they're not just diving in headfirst.
So they're being strategic.
Yeah, it's like they're taking a very measured approach, carefully assessing the risks and opportunities.
Which makes sense given how much they've invested in these ventures.
Exactly. They're not just throwing money at the problem, they're being very deliberate about their moves.
So what's their game plan then? How do they plan to win in these markets?
Well, one thing that stands out is their focus on partnerships.
We've talked about that before, how they're teaming up with other companies.
Right. They're not trying to do everything themselves. They're leveraging the expertise and resources of other players in the ecosystem.
Smart moves, especially when you're entering a new market.
It is. It allows them to tap into existing networks, gain valuable insights, and reduce their overall risk.
So it's like they're building a coalition of the willing.
Yeah, kind of. They're assembling a team of specialists to help them navigate these uncharted waters.
And it's not just about forming partnerships. It's also about choosing the right partners.
Absolutely. They're being very selective about who they work with.
So they're not just jumping into bed with anyone?
No, they're doing their due diligence, making sure that their partners align with their values and their vision.
Which is important, because a bad partnership can really set you back.
It can damage your reputation and erode trust with customers.
So Kaynes is being very careful about who they associate with.
They understand that their partners are an extension of their brand.
Okay, so partnerships are key. But what about the technology itself? Can Kaynes keep up with the rapid pace of innovation in these markets?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one that Kaynes is acutely aware of.
So they're not naive about the challenges.
No, they know that they need to be constantly innovating to stay ahead of the curve.
So how are they doing that?
Well, they're investing heavily in research and development.
That's good to hear.
It is. They're building up their own internal capabilities, but they're also tapping into external resources.
Like universities and research labs?
Exactly. They're collaborating with leading institutions to access cutting-edge technologies and expertise.
So they're casting a wide net.
They're leaving no stone unturned in their quest for innovation.
And it's not just about developing new technologies. It's also about integrating those technologies into their products and solutions.
Right. They need to be able to translate those innovations into real-world applications.
And that's not always easy.
It's not. It requires a deep understanding of customer needs, market trends, and the competitive landscape.
So it's a complex equation.
It is, but Kaynes seems to be cracking the code.
Well, they've certainly got a lot going for them. A strong track record, a clear vision, and a willingness to embrace innovation.
And a really smart approach to partnerships.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listener to remember about Kaynes Technology?
I think the key takeaway is that Kaynes is a company that's not afraid to think big and to take bold action to achieve its goals. They're a company that's constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of electronics, and they're a company that's well worth watching in the years to come.
I think that's a great summary. And on that note, we'd like to thank you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Kaynes technology. We hope you found it informative and insightful.
And remember, the world of technology is constantly evolving, so stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring.